From the CNN Center in Atlanta, I'm David Goodnow with the latest headline news. An admitted serial rapist and convicted killer has become the 13th inmate executed in Texas this year. Herman Clark was pronounced dead just over an hour ago, 8 minutes after being injected with lethal drugs. He was put to death for killing the boyfriend of a woman he was trying to rape in 1981. 2 other Texas death row inmates are expected to be executed over the next few days. In Pennsylvania, a judge has granted a reprieve to a convicted killer who was to be executed Tuesday. Stephen Duffy's appeal will be heard on December 15th. Opening statements in O.J. Simpson's murder trial could start as late as March. On Monday, a DNA hearing was postponed in order to allow a key defense witness to testify. Jim Hill has more from Los Angeles.
So we prefer to pose to make these...
O.J. Simpson appeared to be listening intently as his lead attorney argued with prosecutor Martha Clark. Robert Shapiro accused prosecutors of withholding information about a police photographer who was at both the crime scene and Simpson's home.
It is a crucial element of credibility, and it is something that has been hidden from us for 6 months.
The defense argued the information was needed to judge testimony Detective Mark Furman gave during the preliminary hearing. But prosecutors disagreed.
But it certainly is not contradictory in any way, shape, or form, nor does it present any startling new information that should change anything in the case.
The day began with O.J. Simpson's lawyers unsure if they'd have one of their DNA experts for an upcoming hearing. Peter Neufeld was in a New York courtroom Monday under a judge's order to remain in that case, even though he also committed himself to the Simpson trial. It appeared impossible for Neufeld to be part of Simpson's so-called Kelly Fry, or DNA, hearing December 12th. But defense attorneys now want the hearing delayed until January 4th so Neufeld can attend.
We believe this Kelly Fry hearing will be very brief, and we wouldn't be surprised if we start opening statements the second week in January.
Prosecutors estimate the hearing will be much longer, perhaps 4 to 6 weeks. Prosecutor Marcia Clark also told the judge the case may lose one of its 12 jurors because of unspecified misconduct. A hearing has been set for that issue on December 8th. On December 7th, both sides will choose alternate jurors. Monday afternoon, they finished initial questioning of prospective alternates, ending up with a pool of 44 to choose from. Meanwhile, one member of Nicole Brown Simpson's family is commenting on the case. Tanya Brown, Nicole Brown Simpson's sister, told CNN the ex-football star should plead guilty.
He would save money for his kids, Sydney and Justin, who are only 8 and 6 years old. They have their whole life ahead of them.
Tanya Brown is not the first member of her family to speak critically of O.J. Simpson. Her sister Denise has said on a number of occasions she believes Simpson is the one who killed his ex-wife, Ann Ronald Goldman. However, Lewis Brown has since urged his daughters to remain silent about Simpson's guilt or innocence, and even requested CNN not air the latest comments by Tanya Brown. Jim Hill for CNN, Los Angeles.
3 moderate earthquakes shook Southern California Monday. The first tremors, centered about 20 miles northwest of downtown Los Angeles, registered a preliminary magnitude of 3.5. It was followed about 15 minutes later by 2 other tremors with magnitudes of 3 and 4.5. There are no reports of damage or injuries. Seismologists say all are aftershocks of January's devastating Northridge earthquake. An Illinois man has been sentenced to life in prison for contributing to last year's Midwestern floods. Prosecutors say James Scott told a friend he removed sandbags from a levee along the Mississippi River to prevent his wife from returning home from work. Scott allegedly told his friend he did so he could cheat on his wife. The break in the levee caused the Mississippi to flood 14,000 acres of farmland. In Jackson, Mississippi, police were investigating the shooting death of a toddler. The 3-year-old boy was shot and killed by his stepmother Saturday night. She said she was awakened by a motion detector, saw someone moving in her living room, and thought the child was an intruder. Republicans in the House of Representatives Monday chose Georgian Newt Gingrich to be their next speaker. He will officially take the post when Congress convenes on January 4th. Gingrich renewed his pledge to fulfill the GOP's contract with America.
To every American, I would say that we in the Congress will need your help and your prayers and your courage. The courage to tell us when we're wrong. The courage to give us a new idea. The courage sometimes to take us by the hand and together to walk into a different future doing different things than we were done before.
The White House was quick to criticize Gingrich on Monday for saying that many of President Clinton's staffers are former drug users. Gingrich, who admits to smoking pot himself in college, said the White House was full of members of a counterculture. White House Chief of Staff Leon Panetta called the remarks untrue and reckless.
He's Speaker of the House of Representatives. Words matter. And he's no longer just the minority whip in the House of Representatives. He's not the editor of a cheap tabloid. He's not just an out-of-control radio talk show host. He is the Speaker of the House of Representatives, and he's got to learn to behave as the Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Gingrich offered no apologies, saying if he were Panetta, he'd be talking to law enforcement officials about the charges. Treasury Secretary Lloyd Benson said reports of his imminent resignation are premature. Administration officials say privately he is expected to step down early next year. That would be a blow for the president, as the former Texas lawmaker is widely respected by members of both parties. An appraiser for the thrift involved in the Whitewater land deal pleaded guilty to conspiracy on Monday. As part of a plea bargain, Robert Palmer admitted he falsified real estate appraisals at Madison Guaranty Savings and Loan in Arkansas. The thrift was owned by former business partners of the Clintons. Special counsel Kenneth Starr said Palmer's cooperating with the ongoing Whitewater investigation. Palmer could get a maximum sentence of 5 years in prison or a $250,000 fine. Former Vice President Dan Quayle is expected to be released from an Indianapolis hospital on Tuesday. Doctors decided to keep him an extra day to give more time for blood thinning medications to do their work. Jeff Flock has more.
One more day, say the doctors. Dan Quayle will remain here at the Indiana University Medical Center, recovering from blood clots in his lungs and leg.
Obviously disappointed. He's a human being like everyone else, and nobody wants to be in the hospital.
Especially a man who had hoped to begin a run for the presidency in as little as a month's time. But instead of a full schedule of trips and speeches leading up to a decision on a White House bid as early as next month, Mr. Quayle will be at home resting.
It means very limited activity for 2 weeks, and then he can get up and about and do fairly normal activities. He is not to fly on a plane for another month.
Doctors say prolonged inactivity on plane flights as he promoted a book and campaigned for Republican candidates likely caused the blood clot in his leg, which broke apart and lodged in his lungs last week. It left him with chest pains and difficulty breathing. His lungs are now 70% back to normal. Blood thinners continue to work to dissolve the clots.
The main concern would be complications of the blood thinner, and so we would want to make sure that he doesn't have any bleeding. As long as he doesn't have any trauma, as long as he doesn't go out and try to play football, he should be all right.
No football, maybe, but what promises to be a bruising battle for the 1996 Republican presidential nomination is just now getting underway. The question that Dan Quayle has to answer is whether or not he intends to be on the sidelines or to get into the game. Perhaps some indication of that when he emerges from those hospital doors behind me. That now slated for sometime Tuesday afternoon. I'm Jeff Flock, CNN, Indianapolis.
Former Surgeon General C. Everett Koop is taking on another weighty health issue. Koop, who once led an anti-smoking campaign, is now heading an obesity prevention effort called Shape Up America. It'll feature ads and public service announcements encouraging Americans to lose weight. Sponsors including Weight Watchers and Campbell's Soup are kicking in $1 million each over a 3-year period. President Clinton returned from Budapest, Hungary on Monday, where he attended the 52-nation conference on security and cooperation in Europe. The first day of the 2-day summit was marred by divisions over the Bosnian War and Russia's objections to its former allies joining NATO. But a major accomplishment was Ukraine's renouncement of its nuclear weapons program. At that ceremony, the U.S. and Russia put into force the START I treaty, the first ever to reduce long-range nuclear weapons. The Energy Department said Colorado's Rocky Flats near Denver is the government's most vulnerable nuclear site. A department reports that 14 tons of plutonium are stored there in unsafe buildings. The Rocky Mountain News reports the plutonium poses serious safety threats to employees and the public in event of a fire, accident, or a natural disaster. More survivors of the Achille Lauro disaster arrived in Mombasa, Kenya on Monday. Some had harsh criticism for the ship's crew. Mark Austin has details.
For the pensioner survivors of the Achille Lauro, it was the end of an ordeal. One by one, they came ashore, many bearing the injuries of a mid-ocean rescue that dramatically cut short their holiday cruise.
I think it's a miracle that there's so many people here today. We all survived a tragic experience, but I think the spirit of people it brought us closer together.
And on board one giant cargo ship approaching Mombasa, we found the youngest survivor. 2-year-old Michael Webb made sure he rescued the toy cat he loves. As they approached the coast, his father vowed there'd be no more sea cruises.
Keep it to the Thames. That's far enough. I think our biggest fear, funny enough, was once we were in that lifeboat, what passes through your mind is, are you going to see your other kids again? Are you going to see your family? And you actually think of death.
So 5 days after abandoning ship, the ordeal for these Britons and many others is finally over. Now for the questions surrounding the last hours of the Achille Lauro. These Dutch passengers are furious about what happened, alleging delayed Mayday calls by the Italian captain and neglect by some of the crew.
They didn't help us.
There are also reports that lifeboats couldn't be lowered properly, and in one accident, a man was injured when a raft fell onto a lifeboat. The ship's captain went ashore today and headed straight for a meeting with the Achille Lauro management. But from the majority of passengers, wet, tired and desperate to go home, there was a display of high spirits as they finally reached the dockside. Mark Austin, ITN, Mombasa.
A California man rescued from atop a mountain at Squaw Valley ski resort is recovering from minor frostbite. 45-year-old Alan Austin disappeared Saturday while making his final run of the day. He said he became disoriented in the wintry weather. Whiteout conditions and high winds hampered the search. Austin managed to survive it all by building a snow shelter. Searchers now believe an errant right whale is headed in the right direction. It was first spotted in the Delaware River near Philadelphia, 60 miles upriver from Delaware Bay. The whale either went astray during migration or had a run-in with a boat. At the last report, the young right whale was headed back toward Delaware Bay. Right whales, that's their name, are the rarest of the great whales. Coming up next in headline consumer news, bidding begins on what is being called the largest sale of government property ever. And then later, a Christmas tour of the White House from the First Lady.
The cold air in the northern plains will moderate slightly. The southeast will remain quite mild.
This is Headline News, a CNN network.
Outside of this box of Russell Stover Candies, life has changed in the last 70 years. But inside, very little has changed. We're still using our time-honored recipes and only the finest ingredients. That's why we can guarantee freshness and home-fashioned goodness in every piece. Nobody does chocolate like Russell Stover does chocolate.
How long is a minute? A minute is long enough for 19 smiles and 3 seconds of smile, or 6 giggles and a chuckle. A minute's long enough to hug 2 grandchildren very tightly, or fall in love at first sight. And today, more people keep track of their minutes with a watch from Citizen than any other timepiece on Earth. Citizen, the most preferred watch in the world. Citizen watches how the world tells time.
I've just discovered something quite shocking. Most ordinary credit cards charge interest from the moment you buy something, if you carry a balance as little as $1. Thankfully, American Express has introduced a new credit card called the Optima True Grace Card. It has a low interest rate if you choose to extend payment, no annual fee if you use it 3 times a year, and you get an interest-free grace period on each new purchase, even when you carry a balance. It's a good thing. But don't just throw away your old credit cards. Recycle them. I'm retiling my swimming pool. Apply today. Call 1-800-4-OPTIMA. The sooner you apply for the new Optima True Grace credit card from American Express, the sooner you'll cut your interest charges. It's a good thing. And keep recycling those old credit cards. Apply today. Call 1-800-4-OPTIMA.
nation's largest mutual fund said it's canceling the traditional year-end payment to investors. This is the first time that the Fidelity Magellan Fund has canceled stock distribution in 31 years. Fidelity had estimated it would pay out $4.32 a share. A spokeswoman said the company made an error in its calculation process. The company said it's possible other Fidelity funds will not make a year-end distribution either. So, ever hear of a Mickey Mouse pad? You may soon. Walt Disney Company's announced a new unit called Disney Interactive. It'll focus on educational and entertainment products for computers on CD-ROM. The division also will begin publishing titles for Sega and Nintendo video games. The next generation of communications is about to fill the airwaves, and the competition is heated. Bidding for government contracts began in Washington Monday, and Irv Chapman has details.
A wristwatch-sized telephone of the near future. Vice President Al Gore displayed it as he kicked off an auction of radio frequencies to serve such portable phones.
Now we're using the auctions to put licenses in the hands of those who value them the most.
Bidding could take months and end up putting as much as $9 billion into the federal treasury.